This video shows how to create application fragments and fragment relationships using the JDistil Eclipse plugin. For additional information on the JDistil framework, please refer to the JDistil.com website. This video is the second video in a series of 3 videos supporting the JDistil Eclipse plugin. So to recap, from the first video in this series, we created an Eclipse dynamic web project and used the JDistil configuration in doing so, which generated a dynamic web project and included all the JDistil resources. So in order to save some time, we've gone ahead and created some of the fragments that make up the JDistil demo application. And so we'll hop over to the application itself and log in just to kind of highlight what we're going to be building. So this is the demo application. We've created shippers and we've created suppliers as well as contacts and products. Those are the fragments that we've created so far, just to save time. So in this video, we will be creating customers. We will be creating purchase orders as a child dependency and order details as another dependency. Additionally, we will show creating the relationships between order details and product. We will also show the relationship created between a purchase order and a shipper. Okay, so we'll flip back to our project. Okay, so application fragments. So to create an application fragment, we want to select the wizard and go in and choose the application fragment. Okay, so from here we can see that since we only have one project, and that's the selected project, that's what it defaults to. If you had multiple projects in your workspace, you would choose which project you're generating the fragment for. Here we're going to create we're going to establish a package. So let's go in. And then name is going to be the name of the fragment. And in this case, once this parent field here is for establishing parent-child relationships, right? So now, since customer is going to be is not going to have any parent, it's going to be the first level in terms of this application fragment. We'll see this in action as we create purchase orders and order details. So we select the project, we create the package name, or specify the package name, specify the fragment name, and then we go to create attributes. Okay, so for customer name, let's just talk about, so these are, we're going to have the name of the attribute, we're going to have the type of attribute, and here are the types that are supported. So we have just standard text fields, numerics, boolean, date, time, memo, lookup, email, phone number, postal code. So in this case, it's going to be text, and depending upon the type that's selected, there will be some additional fields required. For instance, text has a max length, numeric has some other fields, and we'll see those in action. And then lookups, we'll see those as well as we define them. So in this case, it's name, and we're going to give it a max length of 30. Our second attribute is going to be a type. This is going to be a lookup. We're going to require it. And here's where we can select from categories or create a new one. So since we've already created product, it had a product type, and we defined a lookup attribute for that fragment. In this case, we're creating a new one. So we're going to specify customer type, and this is going to be a multi-value lookup. Okay. And then we're going to create some other fields quickly. Oh, sorry. Text. And then postal code. And then lastly, a phone number. And we're not going to require that attribute. Okay, so here are all our attributes. So we've created those. That represents the attributes for our customer. The next thing we're going to do is move forward in the wizard, and we're going to specify whether or not we want to enable pagination. Right. So in the case of customers, we're going to have it updated to warrant the use of pagination. We're going to specify a small page size just so we don't have to provide that much demo data. And then we're going to add all fields with the exception of addresses as filterable fields. Right. So when viewing customers, these are the fields you'll be able to apply to filter that data. And then table columns, this is where you can select out of all the attributes you define which ones you want to display on the view when searching for that fragment. So this is we're going to specify all in this case, but you could have a fragment that has a large number of fields, in which case you may only want to display a subset of those. Obviously, all fields will be available when you edit that application fragment. So we'll create our first fragment. Then we're going to go in and we're going to create another one. And this is going to be in the order package, purchase order. And in this case, we're going to select customer as our parent. Okay. And we'll specify date, ship date, and here we'll see a numeric. We're going to require that. And then for numeric values, we can choose whether it's restricted to a positive value, negative value, or either one. And we can set the precision and scale associated with that. So since this represents currency, we'll set precision at 10 and scale at 2. Okay. And we'll see expedite, just a Boolean field. Okay. So move forward. We're going to enable pagination. We're going to add everything in, but great. Filters. Okay. And then we're going to create our last fragment in this hierarchy of fragments, which is going to be our order detail. And here we're going to select purchase order. And then we're going to add our attributes in. So quantity, numeric, required. In this case, it's positive, and we want it to be a whole number. Discount. And then lastly, we're going to add in comments, which is a memo field, and we're going to limit it to 200. Okay. So in the case of details, we're not going to paginate. We're not going to have filters. We're going to display all the values. Okay. So this is in line with the demo application. So we save that. So now let's take a look at what's been created here. So, and again, we won't go into too much detail about the underlying framework, but we'll show you what gets generated for configuration, right? So if we look at customer, we can see that our customer configuration is specifying registering fields, all the fields associated with the customer application fragment. Now that includes the ID for the field, the data type, the default text associated with that field, and then any converter. So in the case of the type here, it's, since our lookups are numeric, are integers, we have a number converter. We'll see. Let's see down here. So if we go to further down, we can see that we've added in some rules. In the case of postal code, we have postal code rule. And then we would look at our actions, right? So for all the actions that are supported with this application fragment, view customers. Here's the default text associated with that. We have a factory for the processor. So view customers will handle viewing customers. Here are the fields that are expected and whether they're required. And so we add in all the actions supporting the application fragment. We go down, and then we register pages associated with that. So here we have the customers page, the name, and whether it's secure. And this is, we won't go into detail, but it's associated with direct page access and then securing the page. So by default, this should normally be set to true unless you have some reason why it wouldn't be, or you need it not to be. So those are our pages. Then we have some object binding. We're binding our domain object to fields, or the properties of that domain object to fields. All right, so that's the customer configuration. So that's created for each fragment that we generate. If we look in the customer package, we can see a couple things here. One, we have our domain object, customer, right? Extends data object. We have all our attributes, our properties and attributes supporting those attributes we defined in the wizard. We look at customer manager. We can see we're extending the bound database manager, and we're specifying the column bindings and the associate bindings associated with that data object. Okay, and so then we have our processor classes that support basically the CRUD operations associated with that fragment. So for instance, view customers. We can see we're specifying some value criteria, definitions. So these are basically the filter fields that we have. We can actually specify how we can order, and then we use that information to create the filter criteria definition. And then we have some other IDs. Again, we won't go into too much detail on the framework, but then that's the extent of the class, right? And select will be very similar because we use the same filtering, same pagination, same sorting that you find on the view page when selecting, for instance, a customer from another view. And then we get into edit customer, and these are all built upon the model classes, right? So they're extensions of the model classes. So following somewhat of the template pattern, it's basically we're specifying metadata and the underlying, or the parent class is handling the operation. So we have edit customer, we have delete customer, and then we have save customer. So it saves us a lot of time. Close those. So those are the classes. The other things that occur here, let's close this down so we can see everything, is SQL, right? So our app category, we created a new lookup customer type. So that customer type's been added to that SQL. Oops. Let's go back. And then app entity. If we go to the bottom of this, we can see where our purchase order, our customer, we're creating the customer table, creating an association there, defining our primary keys, foreign keys. So we do that for each of those fragments. And then lastly, app security is establishing the entitlements associated with those fragments. So if we look at order detail, for instance, we can see we're inserting the entitlements associated with given tasks and the fields associated with that fragment as well. Okay, so all that SQL gets populated, and then if we look at the JSP page, we have the page used to view customers. Fairly straightforward. And the breadcrumb trail. Here's our form. Any messages we want to display, if there are any. Some hidden fields. Again, it's logicless JSPs, right? Because we're leveraging the core UI components and code UI components to build this UI. All right, and then the edit page, and selection is going to be very similar to customer. Okay, so those are the pages that get generated. So that's application fragments. That's how they are created, and that's what you get as a result. the last thing we need to do is establish relationships between these fragments. So we'll go in, we'll choose a fragment relationship. Okay, so now the first relationship we're going to create is between a purchase order and a shipper. So again, we can choose which project. In this case, obviously we're in the demo project. So then we have a source fragment, we have the actual configuration, and a target fragment. So in this case, we're choosing purchase order. And we'll come back to these two fields here. And then we choose the association. Now in this case, we're choosing many to one. And we're going to say our target is going to be a shipper. So this means that when we're editing a purchase order, we're going to select a single shipper to be associated with that purchase order. Now when we do so, we choose which attribute we want displayed. So in the case of shipper, we want to display the shipper name. And we also specify whether this is a required field. So yes, we're going to require this relationship to be specified when you're creating a purchase order. And then whether or not to display that in the view when we're searching or viewing purchase orders. So in this case, we're going to include it in our view. Now, if we chose to have this be many to many, that means that we would have multiple shippers selected potentially per purchase order. If we choose to make it bidirectional, that means that not only, in addition to us being able to manage shippers associated with a purchase order, we would be able to manage purchase orders associated with a shipper. Meaning, when we're editing a shipper, we would be able to select multiple purchase orders. Now, it doesn't make sense for our business case, but just to highlight how this functions and what your options are. And if we do many to many, then we have to specify, okay, what field do we want to display, right? And do we want to include it in the view? So for viewing shippers, do we want to include just the same attributes we had when we're approaching things from the source fragment context? Okay, so this is going to be many to one. Purchase order, many to one to shipper, display the name. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing for order detail. Again, many to one, and we're going to specify a product. Say we want to display the name, it should be required, and please include it in our view. Okay. So now what that gives us, going back to the application, is obviously we created customers, our filters based on what we selected. The pagination, how many we displayed for page 5, obviously we get the sorting associated with that. And then because when we define purchase orders, we specify customer as a parent, we get this hierarchical relationship. Right? So now we have purchase orders. We can go back to our parent, which is customers. We have the filters we had specified for purchase orders. And we have the ability when we're editing to go select a shipper, a single shipper. Right? And we can drill down to order details. And this is where we can also select a product. Okay. With all the standard product filters that we've already defined. So that covers application fragments and fragment relationships. And those relationships, again, are the hierarchical relationships we have between parent and child fragments. And also the many to one and many to many relationships we can define from one attribute to another. Okay, so the next video will cover deploying this application. So if you have additional questions or any additional information on the JDistil framework, it can be found at jdistil.com. Thank you.